November 2, 2016. A quiet afternoon in Redding, California. Sherri Papini, a 34-year-old mother of two, kisses her children goodbye, ties her running shoes, and heads out for a jog. She never comes home. By evening, her husband Keith is panicking. Her phone is found abandoned, earbuds tangled, screen smudged with strands of hair, like something torn out in a fight. Within hours, the story hits local news. Within days, it explodes nationally. A beautiful young mom, vanishing without a trace. It's every family's nightmare. But this isn't just a story of a missing woman. It's a case that shook the country, and then shattered its own truth. A woman found 22 days later, bruised, shackled, branded. Only to later face federal charges herself. So what really happened? Was she a victim of a terrifying abduction, or the mastermind of her own twisted story? Stick around, because the deeper we dig, the darker it gets. If you're into real stories with shocking twists, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's uncover the truth behind the headline, The Disappearance of Sherri Papini. Before the headlines, before the drama. Sherri Papini was just another face in small-town California. She lived in Redding, a quiet, suburban town nestled between mountains and rivers. The kind of place where everyone knows your name. Sherri was a stay-at-home mom. She and her husband, Keith, had two young children. On the outside, they seemed like a picture-perfect couple. He worked in IT. She stayed home with the kids. Family photos showed sunny smiles, holiday trips, birthday cakes. Nothing out of the ordinary. But if you looked closer, there were signs of trouble. Old acquaintances described Sherri as unpredictable, even dramatic. Some said she had a habit of making up stories. Others claimed she craved attention. But at the time, no one really cared. Because in 2016, Sherri Papini wasn't famous. She was just another mom in a quiet neighborhood. All of that changed on November 2. That day, she left home for a routine jog and never returned. What started as a missing person case would soon unravel into one of the most bizarre and controversial investigations the country had seen in years. And it all began with one phone call from her husband. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Sherri Papini disappeared. That morning seemed normal. Keith left for work. Sherri stayed home with the kids, then later sent them to daycare. Around 11 a.m., she went out for a jog near their rural neighborhood. She ran this trail often. It was familiar, safe, quiet. But by the time Keith returned home around 5 p.m., Sherri wasn't there. At first, he wasn't alarmed. Maybe she stopped to visit a friend. Maybe she lost track of time. But when he called and got no response, his worry grew fast. Then he checked her location using the Find My iPhone feature. Her phone was pinging just a mile away. He rushed to the spot and found it lying in the grass near a rural road, earbuds wrapped loosely around it, hair strands tangled in the cord. No sign of Sherri. No clues. Just silence. Keith immediately called police. By nightfall, local officers, search teams, and K-9 units were scouring the woods. A missing person bulletin was issued. Social media lit up. The story was raw, emotional, a young mother, possibly abducted in broad daylight. But no one could have guessed what would follow. The moment news of Sherri Papini's disappearance hit the internet, it exploded. Local reporters covered it first, then national outlets picked it up. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, her face was suddenly everywhere. Blonde hair, bright smile, missing poster details in bold letters. Keith Papini went public almost immediately. Tearful interviews. Emotional pleas. "I just want my wife back," he said, holding up photos of Sherri and their kids. His grief looked real. His voice cracked. Viewers across the country felt his pain. The community rallied. Hundreds joined the search. Volunteers combed through trails, fields, and rivers. Tips poured in from across the state. Police followed every lead, but nothing solid came up. There were no witnesses. No camera footage. No signs of struggle, except for the phone found on the ground. Investigators were stuck. And the longer she was gone, the colder the trail became. Still, Keith held out hope. So did the kids. So did everyone watching at home. For 22 days, America followed the story, wondering, fearing, praying. What happened to Sherri Papini? Then, on Thanksgiving morning, the story took a turn no one saw coming. It was early Thanksgiving morning, November 24, 2016, when the phone rang at the Yolo County Sheriff's Office. A trucker had just spotted a woman on the side of a remote highway, bruised and barely clothed, with a chain around her waist and a bag over her head. She was waving frantically, desperate for help. It was Sherri Papini. She'd been missing for 22 days. Deputies rushed to the scene. What they found was shocking. Sherri was emaciated, her body covered in bruises, her nose swollen and broken. She had been branded on her shoulder. Her wrists were zip-tied. She looked terrified, traumatized, and exhausted. She told investigators she had been abducted at gunpoint by 2 Hispanic women, held captive in a dark room, and abused daily. They fed her scraps, threatened her life, and beat her when she tried to escape. Her story was horrifying. And the country, already gripped by her disappearance, was now stunned by her survival. Keith was overjoyed. He rushed to the hospital, crying as he saw her battered face. "She's here," he told the world. "My wife is alive." But not everyone was convinced. And soon, cracks began to show. At first, Sherri Papini was seen as a miracle, a survivor of a brutal, random kidnapping. News outlets called her Supermom. Social media celebrated her return. But behind the scenes, investigators were uneasy. Her story didn't quite fit. She claimed her kidnappers were 2 Hispanic women, wore masks, spoke Spanish, and kept her locked in a room. But she couldn't describe the house. Couldn't recall a car. And oddly, despite saying they rarely let her out of sight, she said she was dropped off, not rescued, nearly 150 miles from where she disappeared. Then came the physical details. The zip ties, bruises, even the branding, it all seemed real. But was it too real? Almost staged. Detectives quietly questioned how a person could survive for 22 days in such conditions and still walk away. The composite sketches she helped produce led nowhere. No suspects. No arrests. No evidence to support the existence of these 2 Hispanic women. The FBI started to dig deeper. Way deeper. And soon, the miracle story began to unravel. What they would uncover in the years ahead would turn this case from a tragedy into a national hoax. As weeks turned into months, investigators kept pressing, but nothing about Sherri's story held up. They checked surveillance cameras, nearby businesses, traffic reports. No trace of the so-called abductors. No witness sightings. No stolen cars. Nothing. Then, they ran DNA found on her clothes, and that's when everything changed. It didn't match her husband. It didn't match any women. It matched a man, Sherri's ex-boyfriend. The FBI tracked him down in Southern California. At first, he denied knowing anything. But once the evidence was laid out, he cracked. He told investigators, Sherri wasn't kidnapped. She wasn't held captive. She had run away, willingly, and stayed at his apartment for over 2 weeks. She told him she needed to get away from her husband and family. So he helped her hide. He even said she hurt herself, hitting her body, branding her own shoulder. To make it look real. She starved herself. Cut her own hair. Fabricated every detail. It wasn't a kidnapping. It was a performance. And the whole country bought it. After the ex-boyfriend's confession, the case flipped overnight. The FBI confronted Sherri with the DNA results and his statement. At first, she denied everything. She doubled down on her story, insisted she was telling the truth. But agents had more than just one confession. They had text messages. They had timelines. They had proof she'd planned it all. She had even used burner phones to stay in touch with him before disappearing. But even with mounting evidence, it would take years before charges were officially filed. Investigators moved carefully. They wanted to be certain. They didn't just need a confession, they needed a case that would stick in court. Finally, in March of 2022, over 5 years after the hoax, federal authorities arrested Sherri Papini. She was charged with making false statements to the FBI and mail fraud. Why mail fraud? Because she had collected over $30,000 from a victim compensation fund, money she now had to pay back. In a courtroom packed with reporters, she admitted everything. She pled guilty. And just like that, the national sympathy turned into national outrage. When the truth finally came out, it hit hard. The public felt betrayed. Sherri Papini had been a symbol of survival, a woman who endured something unthinkable. Now, she was exposed as a fraud who staged her own disappearance, and allowed the nation to panic, grieve, and rally around a lie. Worse, she had blamed 2 imaginary Hispanic women, fueling racial stereotypes and wasting thousands of hours in law enforcement resources. Keith Papini, who had stood by her through everything, filed for divorce just days after her confession. He asked for sole custody of their children. In his statement, he said he was heartbroken. Not just for himself, but for their kids, who had been dragged through a lie they couldn't understand. Sherri was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay over $300,000 in restitution. Not just for the false claims, but for the time, money, and trust she stole from the public. It was one of the most bizarre and disappointing twists in recent true crime history. And while her story is over, the questions still linger. Why did she do it? Was it a cry for help, or a calculated escape? So here we are. A mother vanishes. The country prays. And for 22 days, we believe we're witnessing a nightmare, until it becomes something else entirely. Sherri Papini wasn't kidnapped. She wasn't a victim. She was the architect of a story that fooled everyone, her husband, her kids, the FBI, and millions of people who genuinely cared. But what drove her to do it? Was it desperation? Mental illness? A hunger for attention? Or something darker, something even she can't explain? This case isn't just about one woman's lies. It's about how easily truth can be bent, how quickly people rally behind a story, and how fragile public trust really is. And now, it's your turn to weigh in. Studio microphone. Do you think Sherri Papini deserved more than 18 months in prison? Was this a cry for help, or a master manipulation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more deep dives like this, with real stories, real people, and real consequences, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because in the world of true crime, nothing is ever as simple as it seems.